everyone. Thank you for joining us on this Tuesday before Thanksgiving. Thank you for the folks we have in the audience and for the folks joining us on Zoom. I would like to call this regular meeting of the Board of Education to order. The next regular Board of Education meeting is on Tuesday, December 14th at 7:30 p.m. in the board meeting room. Just real quickly, thank you for everyone for participating in all our meetings and for the ongoing feedback from all the meetings we have and everything that we have going on. We are truly a district in motion, and I think that's a good thing. We have a lot to be thankful for as a district and as a community. So I want to make sure I wish everyone on behalf of the board a happy and safe Thanksgiving. I hope everyone gets to spend a lot of time with their families, take some time off, and is safe. Also, I think a shout out to Blue Wave and our Turkey Bowl. I am sure it will be a great spirited rivalry game as always. I'm sure our team and everyone participating will be respectful, and I know it will be a great game and a great win for Darien. So have a great family-filled Thanksgiving. I just want to say thank you. So we will move on to the public comment.
Good evening. If you'd like to speak during public comment, please approach the podium or click the participants icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Next, click the raise hand option. You will notice a blue hand icon appear in the upper corner of your screen where your face, name, or number appears. When it is your turn to speak, the facilitator will identify you and announce that you are unmuted for public comment. Once recognized and unmuted, please state your name and address. You will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Do we have anyone from our audience? Yes, please come up to the podium and your name and address. Thank you so much.
Allison Johnson, 573 Middlesex Road. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison Johnson, and I am one of the co-presidents of DAAG, Darien Advocates for Education of the Gifted. On behalf of DAAG and parents of students in the IDEA program, I want to thank the board and the administration for the continued support of the IDEA program. We look forward to hearing the update on the IDEA program review tonight. It is clear from the thorough review that was conducted last spring that the IDEA program is of great benefit to students. We look forward to hearing about how this great program can be made even better for our gifted students. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking this evening. Anyone else from the audience? Okay, Chris, we will move over to Zoom.
Alicia Skinner, you are unmuted and recognized.
Alicia, can you hear us? There you are.
I can, sorry, I was just unmuting. Alicia Skinner, Cliff Avenue. I wanted to thank the board for the transparency that you guys provided in last week's discussion with Mr. Ken Shelton. The board all had very good, legitimate questions, but I walked away with thinking that we just got a lot of consultant speak and vague answers to questions posed by this board. I'm aware of the incidents that have occurred in the schools, and I share the disgust of others. They're unacceptable, and our kids need to feel safe in the schools. However, because of these isolated incidences in the middle school and high school, are we too quick to broadly categorize the entire school system in our town as intolerant because of a small minority? That is certainly not the values of the residents that I know. I appreciate that we are not hiring Mr. Shelton to change our grading system. However, I think Mr. Shelton's views on grading is certainly relevant, as he believes that grading is inherently racist. So if our goal as a district is to fight against acts of hate and intolerance and racism, then I do believe that we can't ignore his views. Since the meeting, I went through some of his work, and he states, quote, "Any discussion about equity, design, social and emotional learning, or any other program that does not include grading in the conversation is irresponsible and harmful to students." These are his words. He's very clear, and he's clear as to what needs to be done. He goes on further to say, eliminating the traditional grading system is only where we start. And so while we are initially hiring Mr. Shelton in a completely different scope, it's not at all far-fetched to think that he may ultimately make radical recommendations and potentially suggest that we eliminate grading. And if the board and Dr. Adley don't agree with Mr. Shelton's views, then we shouldn't hire him, because he's very crystal clear as to where he stands. I also think it's important to note that he lives in California, and you'd need to fly him back and forth for meetings with our students and our administration, or meet with him on Zoom. And I just don't see how that's our best and only option. I think we need to better leverage the resources we have in our school system, the psychologists, the counselors who know our kids, who know our town. Another example of how we can progress, I recently attended my first DEI meeting at Tokenique School. I didn't know what to expect, but it was a group of parents who cared about their kids, who attended voluntarily to share ideas about how to address difficult topics with children. They shared books and other ideas. Best of all, there was no taxpayer dollars spent. There were no consultants. And frankly, I got a lot more out of that grassroots discussion than I did from Mr. Shelton's consultant speak last week. I think in a town where we have views that are so divided as to how to move forward, hiring a person with such controversial views like Mr. Shelton will only divide us further to the detriment of everyone, but most importantly, our children. I just think we need a more inclusive approach. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
There are no other hands at this time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. We will move on to the superintendent's report. Dr. Adley.
Good evening, everybody. It's nice to see you on this special week. Big thanks to our Middlesex Quiz Bowl team and the staff for organizing and the parents for supporting that event. It was once again an excellent turnout, and they had over 50 students from Middlesex against various teams from New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, including Massachusetts. We offer our congratulations to all the students that did a superb job. And our Middlesex A team came away winners of the actual tournament. So congratulations to Matthew Del Vecchio, Roman Gagliardi, Maya Pujara, and Naive Shagal. So congratulations to them and to all the other participants. This is a long-standing tradition and a long-standing successful program that we have. Also want to say congratulations to the cast and crew of Theatre 308 for their Metamorphosis play that was put on with. It's just absolutely remarkable and just phenomenal and tremendous performance. We thank the staff again. I mean, also the army of parents, and I think Julie, you're part of that army of parents. Thank you. The arts are alive and well. Thank you and congratulations to our students. Parent conferences are coming up immediately after the break, and report cards will be sent out on Monday, this coming Monday. Cape Cap Convention has come and it has gone. Thanks to Mr. Tremberg and also Ms. McCammon for attending the Cape Conference. The theme was Future Civility, Diversity, and Student Voice. At some point, maybe we get a wee update. Robotics will be up and running. The invitations will be going out to parents probably tomorrow, and the first meeting will be in December, so we're glad to be able to get the program up and running. That's an exciting opportunity. South Fairfield County Legislative Breakfast is scheduled for December 3rd. The board chair will be invited to that, and any other board members who would like to participate. Facilities Committee was moved from November 11th to Thursday, December 9th. We will be rescheduling the Policy Committee, and the first Curriculum Committee is tentatively scheduled at this point for December 2nd, but we'll be discussing an agenda for that. Want to also congratulate the kids, and there's excitement around the town, and wish them good luck in the annual Turkey Bowl, and take an opportunity to sincerely thank you as a board. It's been a long start of the school year too for you as board members, and you've dealt with a lot of issues. So I hope you take time to celebrate the holiday with your family and friends, as well the students, the parents, and the community members. We wish everybody a safe and a happy Thanksgiving holiday. Thank you.
I will add that I got to meet all the folks, all the teachers participating in the robotics training this past week, and then got to see the finished product and how it all came together and how they each had built something and laid it all out on the floor. It was absolutely fascinating. And these teachers are just so excited to be part of this program and roll it out. But what they accomplished in a day with the trainers that had come in, I think the one gentleman was from California, and it was incredible. It makes me want to take the class. We'll move on to approval of minutes. May I have a motion to approve the following minutes? Minutes of the organizational meeting held on November 9th, 2021. Minutes of the regular meeting held on November 9th, 2021, and minutes of the special meeting held on November 18th, 2021. Mrs. McCammon, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Board committee reports. Mr. Sini.
On Thursday, November 18th, the Finance Committee met. I was elected as chairperson at that meeting. We reviewed the fiscal 22 financial report through October, which Mr. Rudo is going to summarize later this evening. Based on the review and the discussion that we had at the meeting, the Finance Committee recommends that the board approves the 4 budget transfers proposed by the administration this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Sini. Any other committee reports? Sorry. Good. We will move on to presentations and discussions. Dr. Adley, update on the school status.
That's Ms. Kasuchi on the phone. I'm not sure if she wants to or something. Thank you. So it's been an interesting time here as the cases continue to rise at this point and increase over the last couple of weeks or so. You've seen that in the schools, and it's also been reflected in the town. So I'll give you, this is a new one. This isn't part of your packet. I just got this this morning from the State Department. So this just gives you an up-to-date through the 13th kind of the cases. So the blue must really, Mr. Kasuchi must really want something, but I'm not taking a shot. So the right-hand side, the blue is just really the vaccination rates. So the darker the communities, the higher the vaccination rate. So you can see for the most part, the map on the left reflects the map on the right somewhat in terms of the red aligned to the eastern part of the state that has less vaccination. And you can see how Darien right there now is in the red zone at this particular point. So even though we have tremendously high vaccination rates, the Screen and Stay program has been, I think, successful. It's had another layer of monitoring, follow up, both from our parents' point of view. Thank you to the parents. You have a daily monitoring to do, and a big shout out to our nursing staff, because it's sort of like increased their workload a lot over the weekend. It's just not as straightforward as the quarantine part of it. But we basically have 60 or so students out in Screen and Stay and 70 quarantined, or the reverse of that. But it's basically a split between them. So for those 60 or 70 students, at least they're able to actually stay in school. I'll give you this is kind of where we are right here. Screen and Stay is a 60, quarantine is a 70. And you can see sort of the location of where the events are happening at this particular point. But you've seen those as the nightly, what seems to be a nightly update of the COVID cases. The immunization clinics have gone well. There was close to 500 students who were vaccinated this particular weekend and 600 the week before. So we do think people will have the opportunity to avail themselves of other locations to get vaccinations if they need it. The town and the school will continue to offer things as we see that particular need. The student testing program there's about 260 in any particular week are participating in that. Just over a week ago, the results came back where there was only 1 or 2 COVID positive tests, and yet you can see the increase, the large increase. So it was an interesting, and those were people who were unvaccinated. So it was an interesting dichotomy of information. The safe return plan we'll have to submit to the state by the 23rd. So any revisions that we have, it's all updated online, but is what we will be submitting to the state. We have to do a periodic review, so we will submit that on the 23rd. The CIAC guidelines, there was information that came out today about CIAC, and fundamentally what they're talking about is sports such as basketball, indoor track, and volleyball, right? Particularly for games after school, not for practices or otherwise, that the students can remove their masks, the coach can remove the mask, the kids on the bench can remove the mask at the discretion of the school districts. I'm going to tell you something. None of this makes sense anymore. Right? I mean, forgive me for saying it like that. It's just a lot of it doesn't make sense anymore in terms of logically describing why that is the case. if you're vaccinated, if you're vaccinated and part of the team, you can do that. If you're not vaccinated, you have to wear the mask, which is another interesting optic. But if you're in PE class and you're a fully vaccinated class of 20 kids, and you want to play basketball, you still have to wear your mask. So there's a lot of, it's just hard to follow the logic. I mean, I said it tongue in cheek a moment ago, but now I'm saying it seriously. It's just hard to follow the logic. And this morning, it's just, you can hear people trying to explain it. And you know when people are trying to explain something that doesn't just connect all the dots. Now, perhaps it's a strategy, which is the biggest thing would be this is the first in a step to maybe we don't have to wear masks. But we'll see what they say. But at this point, you can only do and enter this program and participate in this way after the winter break. So it'll be after the Christmas winter break period that you would be allowed to do that. So we have to still meet with our team, our medical team to review this, because it also has implications for youth football and so on and so forth, and who follows the information, who gets all the information, coaches, so on and so forth. So we will do that follow up as soon as we get back, and more to come on that particular issue. And I think these are just your monthly update, but you can see the uptick there in November. This is for the town. So you can clearly see this. There's a different dynamic going on. Now, what happens because of travel and what happens because of the winter, so on and so forth, remains to be seen. But that's the update on COVID.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. Board questions? Karen.
Thank you. I don't have a question. I just have a comment that I want to publicly thank Alicia Skinner and Mr. Knopf and Dr. Adley for creating the vaccine clinics for the younger students. A few of us at the table have had a chance to volunteer at those of the past few Saturdays, and the parents that have chosen to vaccinate their children that way were very thankful that it was a very well run program. So thanks.
Well, thank them. Yes, you did. And thank you very much. Just to make the announcement that there'll be no COVID contact tracing just over the break here until the weekend, until we get to probably Sunday morning. You can still call the number and you can still put it in, and then the nurses will pick up at the end of the weekend. Listen, these people need a break as well.
Good. Mr. Senior.
Alan, just a quick clarification. You said 260 elementary children are now being tested on a weekly basis, give or take.
Give or take.
Are we catching some of these cases in those tests, or most of these cases coming out from the outside testing world?
Well, there's only like two. We had
Only two. is that
only
what
two
you said?
cases.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Any other questions, board? Good, thank you. Moving along, progress report on Ox Ridge School Building Project. Ms. Amy Samuelson and Mr. David Cravanzola. We have them. I see Dave. I see Luke. I see Amy. Great. So I think this is exciting. Thank you, Dave and Amy and Luke for joining us this evening. We're going to get out there and do an on-site tour. Dave and I met last week and talked a little bit about that, but just a big thank you. This is an incredible team. Luke has done an incredible job in a very difficult situation, I think, with the tightness of the school up there, getting the school up and running, busing, drop off. And thanks to the team of Dave Cravanzola from APO&G and Amy Samuelson from SLAM, it's just a really good team that understands the district, understands what we're trying to do. And if I go back 2 years and think about the 5-hour meetings we had, Amy, talking about design, and to actually stand up on the roof and see bricks and see the structure in the courtyard, it's very exciting. And I think it's going to be a real exciting addition to the district when it's done. So with that, thank you, and I'll turn it over to all three of you.
Okay, I'm going to.
David, if you may, yes, you're going to have to project it because the file that you sent was too big. I couldn't get it just in the time period to get that downloaded. So I think you have the presentation.
I do.
Right.
I
Okay.
do.
We appreciate the holiday decorations behind you, David.
We
I was
we like to
thinking
get an early, we like to get an early start here. I'm not gonna lie to you.
I just want to reiterate also that David and Amy have just been phenomenal, and a big shout out to Dr. Forshaw, because he's just been unbelievable through this process. But with that, we've asked David and Amy just to give you a quick overview, just kind of where we are and what it's looking like at the minute, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna run.
There's no way to get it up on these screens. All right.
No, I was a little late. I guess the email was too large to come through to Dr. Radley's. My apologies.
We've got a bunch of monitors on the floor, so good.
All right, so we'll go through a few things first, just how to bring everyone up to speed on the overall project timeline. We started construction in December of 2020. It's when we mobilized to the site and started setting up fencing and those separations from the school activities to the construction activities. And we are currently on track to complete the academic wing in May of this coming year. And at the end of the school year is when everything will be moved over during the summer and prepared so that you could be using the academic wing for the start of the 22-23 school year. We're going to start taking down the old Ox Ridge this summer, June of 2022, and we will complete the assembly wing in May of 2023. That'll be the gymnasium cafeteria area. And then at the end of the summer of 2023, the project as a whole will be complete with all the site work and parking amenities completed. So with that, just a quick spin through the site plan. What you're seeing here is the way things look now. The orangish area is the existing Ox Ridge School. The area in yellow is the area that we have been constructing. That's considered the academic wing. And then this is an image, compliments of SLAM, of what the final site design will look like, with the academic wing being that donut shape and the assembly wing being the long shape in the upper left corner with all of the new parking areas and play areas. So this past summer, we went through an immense amount of work of getting a lot of the infrastructure done at the parking lot that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. And thanks to Dr. Forshaw and Mike Lynch and Dr. Radley and their cooperation, we were able to get an immense amount of work done and get everything ready back for the start of this past school year for pickup and drop off. So what I'll do now is I'll take you through a few photos of the way things look on site right now. The building is broken up into 4 areas. Area A is essentially the area that will house the new ELP, and areas B and C are the all the other academic areas of the building, and then area D is the portion of the building that we won't start constructing until this coming summer, once the old Ox Ridge School gets taken down. So what you're seeing here is the ELP wing. The structure of the building is up, the roof is on it. We've started to enclose that portion of the building, and we're in the early stages of starting to install all of the building systems for that portion of the building. Around the building is still mainly dirt, and it will remain that way until the springtime. This here is a view of area C. So the existing Ox Ridge School is on the other side of the brick portion of the building there, and you'll see that in that portion of the building, the brick veneer is completed, and they've actually started installation of the windows. In the interim, all of the light white material you see there is all temporary plastic, and that's to enclose the building because we're going to begin turning on temporary heat, so that'll allow us to start installing some of the finishes within the building. And the large area on the left side of the screen is all glass that looks out into the courtyard, and that's where this image is taken from. Moving on next, this is the main level of the building. This is one of the kindergarten classrooms. Inside there, you'll see that the wall framing is all completed, and we've started to install all of the building systems. You'll see some of the metallic components at the top of the screen. Those are all the air systems that'll bring heat and cooling to the rooms. And in the weeks to come, we'll be closing up those walls and then starting to do finishes. This is also on the main level. This is in the 2nd grade area. This is their learning commons. So on the right would be looking out to the courtyard. On the left are all the classrooms. And right in front of us in the photo is where that centralized area where the lockers and outside common areas are for all the students. And again, you'll see there all the building systems that'll eventually be concealed are all being installed and inspected on a day-to-day basis. This is one of the last photos here. This is in the lower level. These are things that most people will never see, but are the heart of the building. So at this point, we're starting to install all of the main systems to the building. That's what you're looking at here. This is actually where all of the electrical and power for the building will originate. So the heating systems, we've started to install the rooftop mechanical equipment. The fire sprinkler equipment is now in the building. So all these systems will start to really come on board in the months to come. So if you are driving by Oxbridge, what you'll start to see is the area where the new main entrance will be. You'll start to see that become enclosed, and then you'll start to see those glass systems go up in the next couple of months as well, similar to what you saw on that photo from the courtyard. And with that, I will I'll hand it over to Amy. Amy, if you want, like I said, I'm happy to continue to advance the slides for you if you want. That way we don't have to change presenters.
That would be great. I think in the interest of time, that's fine.
Okay.
Thanks, Dave. You can go to the next slide, actually. So right now, while we monitor the construction that's taking place and we work together with ONG and AP to get that done, we're also spending time finalizing the design of the equipment and furniture that will go into the building. So lately, in the past couple of months, we've had a series of meetings with Luke and his team at the school, reviewing all of the furniture options. The meetings also included some of the building committee members who had interest in the finishes and the selection of that furniture. So we've been going through that, and we will continue with that. We have one more user group meeting coming up just after the holiday to review the OTPT equipment. Once that's completed, you'll see on the list on the left of this slide, December 3rd through the 9th, we'll end up going back to the drawing board, finalizing all of our specifications and getting it ready to present both to your group, the building committee, and finally to the state of Connecticut. The state will need to approve all of our specifications for furniture and for technology equipment in two separate meetings called phase 2 and phase 3, although that doesn't coincide with the building phases. So don't let that confuse you. The state just has a different way of numbering things. We will be looking for approval from the building committee and then from you as the Board of Ed by way of a signature before we go to the PCR meetings with the state. I have requested a meeting with the state. They haven't gotten back to me yet, but I've requested a meeting anytime after December 15th. So you're correct, Dave, to go ahead and move forward. This is just a sampling of some images of the furniture that we've been selecting with the help of Luke and his team. This will be sent out to both state bid vendors, and some of it will be bid in a public bid. And we expect that all to come in February. The bids come in received in February, and this furniture will be installed along with your technology equipment like smart monitors, touchscreen monitors for all of the classrooms, wireless access points, and telephone systems. And that'll go in after the building is turned over in May with completion of that academic wing. I'm happy to take questions from the board, but that hopefully is an overview of the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Luke. Also, just a shout out, he's hiding over there in the corner, but Mike Lynch is just an incredible part of this team,
Yes.
contributing on a daily basis, knowing these buildings and keeping the existing building up and running. So, and Katie has been leading the charge on the internal finishings. You can see what an incredible job she and Diane Boston have been doing. So it's an incredible team effort. So thank you. I'll pause there for any board questions or comments. All good? All good. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Luke.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Is there any need for us to stay on?
Absolutely
No,
not.
no.
Just wanted to ask to make sure.
Happy
In that case,
Thanksgiving.
happy
Have some hot
Thanksgiving.
mulled cider next to your tree.
Yeah, right. Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving.
Good to see you guys.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Moving along. NEASC update, Mrs. Ellen Dunn.
Hi, good evening, everyone. As you know, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges accreditation process has begun at DHS, and this is all in preparation for the decennial visit, which will take place in the spring of 2024, which sounds like a long way off, but as we know, time flies. The new accreditation process begins with a self-reflection that takes place this year. And we are about 7 weeks into that process. Our assistant principal, Kate Moulis, and our English teacher, Jen Record, are the accreditation co-chairs for the work being done right now in preparation, ultimately for that visit in 2024. And so I've asked Kate to give you a brief update on the work that we've done since late September. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you, Ellen. Good evening, everyone. I will go ahead and screen share. Oh, if it will let me. There we go. So as Ellen said, NEASC has updated their process for accreditation since the last time that Darien High School went through the accreditation. As I shared with you when I met with you in the late spring, the process begins with a self-study. As I said, it focuses on self-reflection, and that is where we are right now in our process as we work towards our collaborative conference. Since I last spoke with you, we have received our date for our collaborative conference, which will be April 4th and 5th this year. Following that collaborative conference, we will implement a growth plan based on agreed upon areas of priorities from the standards from NEASC. That will last us through the 2023 school year, at which time we'll begin more self-reflection and work towards our summary report, culminating in a decennial visit, as Ellen said, in the spring of 2024, which is when the accreditation takes place. In addition to updating the process for accreditation, NEASC has also revised their standards. So they have gone from 10 standards for accreditation to 5 standards. And those standards are student learning at the forefront, followed by learning resources, learning support, professional practices, and learning culture. So our action steps as we self-reflect on those standards are first to conduct a community survey, which we have completed. That survey was given to us by NEASC. Then gathering additional evidence. And now we are in the process of analyzing all of that evidence to self-assess on the 5 standards, which is broken down into 32 principles. We will work on our self-reflection report and begin to plan and host our collaborative conference, as I said, in April, following which we will develop our school growth plan. So our self-reflection committee is meeting on our PLC mornings at the high school. You can see a picture of them at our most recent meeting. We have an enthusiastic and strong committee representing Darien and Darien High School. The self-reflection report that the committee generates and starts with a school and community summary and is followed by a look back, which summarizes the work that the school has done since the last accreditation visit, the current conditions, which speaks to those 5 standards, capacity for continuous development, growth as a learning organization, goals and vision for the future, priority areas for NEASC school growth plan. I did ask one of our teachers, Steve Leet, who is both on the Selfreflection Committee as well as recently attended a decennial visit at Massac High School, if he would share a few words with us. He said, "Going on a NEASC visit is the best professional development to be found. The process has been streamlined in a very effective way to identify and support a school. In my visit to Massac High School, I saw that the vision of the graduate is and should be truly at the center of everything. Curriculum, instruction, assessment, of course, but also staffing priorities, community relations, professional development, and PLC planning, and many other aspects of the school's policy and practice. As a self-reflection committee, we have the opportunity to examine how all parts of the school work together. Through this process and our collaborative conference, we have the opportunity to identify meaningful areas to work on." So thank you. That is the work that we are doing at THS.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. I will open up to board questions, comments. Mrs. Best.
Hi, thank you for the update. Could you just give a brief description of what exactly a collaborative conference is or what that looks like?
Sure. The collaborative conference visit team is a few individuals who will visit DHS over the course of 2 days. They will have a tour of the school. They'll meet with teachers and students and other groups identified by NEASC. And after that, they will generate a report back to us, both on our standards and our areas of growth that we've identified.
Mrs. McCammon.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Aaron.
Thank you for the update. I'm just curious how the self-reflection committee was formed. How were those people chosen to be on that committee?
Volunteers.
Any other questions or comments? Great. Thank you both for joining us this evening, and thank you for all the hard work that goes in doing this, from preparation to the long timeline ahead of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to further discussion and possible action on proposed new courses for Darien High School year for 2022, 2023. Mr. Tranberg.
So the memo from the last meeting is in your packet. It includes the new proposals as well as changing to existing courses. I think Mrs. Dunn will hang on if there are any questions following those presentations from last time, and I'm glad to address any questions as well.
Any questions? Yes, Mrs. Ackman.
I think this is just for the administration. Does the change in digital journalism have any effect on the current contract?
The current teacher's contract?
Yeah.
No, it does not.
So the asynchronous days will meet the standards that we had set. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, we will move on. May I have a motion to approve the proposed new courses for the Darien High School for the 2022-2023 school year as discussed at the November 9th Board of Education meeting? Mrs. McCammon, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Tranberg. Thank you, Alan.
Thank you.
We will move on to curriculum update, talented and gifted. Mr. Tranberg.
Good evening again.
Yeah.
So I have an update on our gifted program evaluation from last spring. So I'll talk a bit about our steering committee, the topic of math acceleration, the middle school schedule, and the high school achievers program. And again, this always connects to our vision, mission, and core values. This is a list of the members of the Gifted Education Steering Committee. You might recall that every section of that evaluation last spring had considerations and commendations, and all of those were prioritized into one page of the most important considerations and recommendations. And the first one being, we really needed a steering committee that would help guide this work. So we've started that steering committee, and these are the members. The first thing that those members did was review all of those, review the whole report and look at those commendations and considerations again, and really prioritize what was most important. And no surprise, because this is what resonated with many of us in our discussions. Of course, considering the needs of the whole child, which is not only their academic success and they're working with like-minded peers, but also social emotional learning needs. The idea of math acceleration at the elementary level, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a moment. The middle school schedule and providing students access to their time that was not during flex. And also considering the credit threshold for achievers and a means to expand those offerings. So some of these are familiar because we actually addressed that last bullet through the process that just got approved as a consideration for our last year. And at that time, it was more information is needed. And we're still in a place where we're trying to get all of that information to make the best decision. And I'll skip over the shock float for right now. But our elementary math acceleration, it's important to point out that this topic is not limited to gifted education identification. This just happens to be the vehicle to where it came through and surfaced, in part because we had student focus groups. And through those student focus groups, they were of the disposition to really share that where they would like to be more challenged is in math. In all of the parent surveys that we've received during the process as well, this came up as a topic. So while we do have a plan to look at elementary math acceleration, the group discussed and decided, well, we need to expand it beyond just this idea of gifted education, because it's not limited to students that are identified as gifted. It's the saying that you've heard many times is high achieving students don't necessarily equate to students identified as gifted. And we also wanted to make sure we're always considering twice exceptionality throughout this process as well. So we did also, in addition to the gifted steering committee, we have a math acceleration team as well. And we have varied membership that expands beyond who's on the gifted committee, the gifted education committee. And we had our first meeting, and everyone has quite a bit of homework to come back to the table because we want to frame, we're really completing a mini study throughout the winter and the spring. And we want to provide recommendations, not only based on the research, but we have several visits planned outside of the district. And we've already started our internal, we're calling them learning visits, to make sure we can identify what are all the best practices that we have here and that we want to replicate, and what are other things that we want to consider moving forward. So we're hoping to, if we can be as aggressive as possible with our recommendations, to have this wrapped up for the spring of this year. The Middlesex schedule, this is also a familiar topic, looking at creating some elective offerings, because there is some room in the schedule to do that. That will not come with a cost necessarily. And one of those elective offerings could potentially be time for students to be in this program, to be in an elective course. So the Principal Rodriguez is looking at these options now, and I don't want to say too much more because I know she's working hard on it to make sure she can propose something that will work for the school. And as far as achievers at the high school, so we are also looking at the credit threshold. It's a half credit course, and we discussed the potential of it being a full credit, also pass fail versus a letter grade. The big topic that came from the report, you might remember, is opening up access beyond students identified. It's almost like a mini, it's like a mini practicum that students complete throughout that freshman year. And we talked about exploring the possibility of an application process to be in the class if students have an area of passion that they'd like to explore deeply in their freshman year. And the other piece that was a recommendation was, within this course, within these topics, can there be an aspect of service learning? So those are our focus areas as we're working on that this year. And as you remember, there were so many recommendations or considerations and commendations. Those aren't all of the things that we have to work on, but those were those that are prioritized. And we also discussed the importance of how does SEL fit into the picture, looking at identification processes, specifically identifying students for talents, not only their academic giftedness. And I will leave it at that, and glad to answer any questions. This is very, very exciting work. The committee is excited, and so is the math group as well. So very focused and happy to do the work.
Thank you, Mr. Tranberg. Board questions. Mrs. Worm.
So I'm so happy to see that you're actually looking at math acceleration. It's something we've been asking for 15 years, maybe longer. You talked about the middle school schedule. Is that going to be instead of the lunch pullout?
That's the idea. So when we talk to, not only in the parent surveys, but the student focus groups, they did not love giving up their lunchtime and sometimes their flex time.
Yeah.
To get the
That's great.
services.
I'm so glad that, another thing we've been asking for years. So great to see it.
Thank you, Mrs. Warren. Any other questions? Great work in progress. Thank you, Mr. Tranberg. Mrs. Achman.
Sorry, we did hear the consideration of half credit to full credit last year. So if that's to come again, can you just make sure that we know what's different? Because we voted on it last year. So what's different, what's changed, what's learned, just so we have, if it comes back to us as a consideration, we understand it fully.
I will promise you that.
Thank you. Any other board questions? Well, thank you, and thank you, the committee, for all the hard work being done on this, and we look forward to continuing to get updates. We'll move along. Update on 2021, 2022 board goals. Dr. Adley.
Yes, they are as you see them, and these goals sort of complement the district strategic plan in many ways, so some overlap a little bit. And this is the first of a series of updates. You generally get 3 updates throughout the year on the board goals. I'm not going to read through them, to be honest with you. Just the big highlights to support the district's return plan. You've seen that on a regular basis. You know that intrinsically for the most part. I've listed a few things. If you want to list some more, these are board goals, so I invite you to participate in that particular process. The rigorous teaching and learning across the district. So from today's discussion on talented and gifted to other discussions about establishing a curriculum subcommittee and so on and so forth. You can see how we've addressed that, or it's only November, right? So we're certainly a lot of work to do and work in progress. The strategic plan, we've had a number of updates. We know that intrinsically, and we could probably add things that we've done here too, but I'm just going to let you read them and then you can certainly comment on them. Advancing the district elementary school project. So we've just had the update today and we're well on our way with the other projects for the other schools. Policy audit, we've had many discussions about that, that it's been essentially completed. So we're in the process now, a regular process of updating policies. District communications continues to be a work in progress, and we've shared some things that we're doing in that capacity. I'm sure we'll continue to work on that. And increase engagement for professional development. There are a couple of people around the table, and actually other people who are not around the table but did participate in webinars. And Jill Buchanan attended CABE, which is good. So I encourage you, this is really a self-reflection goal the board set themselves. So where we have the opportunity to participate in some things, we will have the legislative breakfast coming up, and then there'll be opportunity to participate at the legislative level. So that was a professional goal that the board embraced. And anyway, you can see some things if you want to add things to that or question things about it, I'm certainly happy to do that. But I'm not going to read this, it's there.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. I'll open up to board questions. Mrs. Best.
Having participated in the new Board of Ed member orientation last week, thank you. That was very thorough, very comprehensive. I found it incredibly helpful. So thank you there from goal 7. And then I had a question on goal 3. I was just curious if there are any additional efforts lined up to share out the strategic plan with the community at large beyond the conversations that happen here. And obviously, I know it's being interwoven into everything that we're talking about moving forward, which is terrific. But road showing it or anything along those lines? Are there any plans? Like
Yeah, we could probably take a few things on the road in some capacity, either through Zoom or otherwise. I try on the weekly update to now take a piece of each piece moving forward. So the next one will be, when we come back, will be goal number 1 and try to talk about that. But I think we could probably do other forums or other ways too. So that's probably a good idea in terms of just another opportunity to do that.
Maybe some interactive forums would be helpful for parents. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mrs. Best. Any other questions or comments? Very good, thank you, Dr. Adley. We'll move on to the presentation of the updated 5-year capital plan, Mr. Rudel and Mr. Lynch.
There we go. Good evening, everybody. So we have the capital plan in front of you, and as you can see, it looks a bit different from previous years. It's been streamlined quite a bit because any project that was felt could be incorporated into the removal of the portables and expansion of the school buildings was folded into that project, removed from this. We also got rid of naming things priority 1, 2, and 3. And we've anything that's in the first year, we're considering that a priority 1. And then the other items in the next 5 years are priorities 2 and 3, et cetera. So we did try to keep the dollar amounts year to year to be fairly constant. At the last minute, we took out money that had been put in for library renovations at some of the other buildings, figuring with the size of the money, that would probably become a town project. So you'll see the third year of the capital project looks way lower. That's why. If we hadn't taken that out, it would have been actually higher than any of the other years. So I'm ready to answer any questions anybody has about any individual project. Or you can wait till the March tour.
Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Thank you for the detailed work and just for going over the fact that we've kind of moved a lot to the renovation projects that are ongoing. So thank you very much. Mr. Brown.
I just want to say thanks, Mike, for the format change. It's very, I like the layout. Really appreciate your effort on that.
You're welcome.
I appreciate the level of detail in the, when you bulletproof out why it's important. I think that's helpful. So thank you so much for that.
Mr. Lynch, I will ask, we're still down 3 trucks that when we get them based on manufacturing, right?
Yeah, I actually, Mr. Rudel and I were talking about that this evening earlier, and we hadn't heard anything. And then I got an email from Carl Chevrolet, who was one of the winning bidders for one of the vehicles. And he said he has still not heard anything from GM. He said he has no idea.
Good. Anything you need for the winter, you've got yourself pretty well covered.
We do. We got our last piece of our last sander. We had that put on last Friday. That's actually on the foreman's truck. So he will be using his own personal car when it snows, and we'll be using that for sanding. So we're okay. We're
okay. Just let us know if there's anything that you need.
No, we're ready to go. Thank you.
Good. Mrs. Achman.
Can I just go back to your comment on year 3? Are we saying, can you explain that a little bit more to me? And the libraries, are you saying the library project would be over $1 million?
Yeah, when the original presentation was made by Mr. Scheib, okay, there was a piece of that detailed work at the high school, middle school, and Tokenie School libraries. It was not as comprehensive as the work needed at the other 3 elementary schools. And so it was, when we look at the dollar amount, it goes over that $1 million threshold, even if we did each building as a standalone project. So when it goes over the $1 million threshold, it goes to the Board of Selectmen for a building committee. So we just felt it wasn't appropriate to have that in our budget. If it was going to, we never put in the budget building Oxford School.
Makes perfect sense. I think
Yeah.
you did the right thing. We should probably revisit those $1 million projects like the libraries. It's all right. But it makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other board questions or comments? Good. Thank you, Mr. Lynch. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Rudel.
Mr. Lynch.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
You too. Thank you so much. We'll move along. Discussion on October 2021-22 financial report and possible action on budget transfers. Mr. Rudel.
This is the financial report through October. We are currently forecasting a year-end positive balance of 104,260, or about 0.1% of our budget. The general education RCs are forecasting a positive 182,000. The special education RCs are forecasting a deficit of 87,000. And then the COVID RC 28 is forecasting $9,008. These are our COVID and ARP expenses. In total, it's a little over $1,034,000. The 9,008 is what has hit our operating budget. And then we have the breakdown of the grant, which is for staffing, facilities, technology, and contracted service. Overall salaries are a positive variance of 152,000. It's primarily driven by salary savings for turnover, some student interns that were not able to be filled, some clubs that are not running, and a portion of budget control that hasn't been used. Operating is forecasted at a deficit of just over 92,000. We do have a recommended transfer for athletic transportation. Due to the bus driver shortage, we have had to contract out to some private charters to fulfill some athletic transportation. We are trending positive in legal fees. The correct partnership fee came in under budget due to the state grant. We did put in the forecast the potential expenditure of the DEI consultant. And then we have some deficit to contracted speech due to some additional staff out on a leave of absence, and then out of district transportation. Fixed is a positive variance of just over 50,000. Utilities continue to trend positive at a positive 42,000. And then we have some small positive variances in property insurance, workers' comp insurance, and student accident insurance. Revenue is forecasted at a slight deficit of just over 5,000. Field rental revenue has exceeded budget already for the year, and then ELP tuition is down about $29,000, which is slightly above the previous month, as we have had a couple of students classified to special education. Overall, we do have 4 transfers recommended. The first is for transportation for $24,300. This is for some transportation tuition agreements. We are recommending taking the funds from the vacant student interns and some turnover savings. Another $10,500 for the additional month of no third Suburban. The third Suburban has been acquired, and the driver actually starts a week from tomorrow. And then contracted speech for $34,000. We do have 2 additional SLPs who are out on the leave of absence, which is an increase of 2 from the previous month. And then athletic transportation, $26,826. And this is due to the driver shortage, and we've had to contract out trips at a higher rate for cross-country, golf, soccer, football, field hockey, and volleyball. We are recommending taking those funds from savings in athletic training, intramurals, and the YMCA agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Rudel. So I think the Finance Committee reviewed this, and I think one of the conversations that came out of the Finance Committee is to actually make the recommendation up to the board that this was reviewed, and they're making the recommendations for the transfers, which is what Mr. Sini did. So with that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments around anything in the financial report. Mrs. Akman.
Sorry, Mr. Rudolph, just a question about the IDEA 611 ARP grant, the 2-year grant that we're waiting for approval on. It's a 2-year grant. Do we have any idea, if awarded, how much we would expend this year?
At this point, we are not expecting to expend anything this year.
Okay, so that we would hold over.
We would hold it for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Akman. Any other questions or comments on the financial report? Great. I have a motion to approve the October 2021 budget transfers as presented. Mr. Sini, second by Mrs. McCammon. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Rudel. We move along to discussion to update on the 2022-2023 budget. Dr. Adley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Schemberg. So for people who haven't gone through this process before, this is a preliminary look at things, ideas, priorities, considerations that might be in the budget and that are certainly under consideration right now. First of all, we have a full month to go for the administration to work out what it would like to bring forward. And certainly we have issues to actually address under some of these items and others. So I'll make a few just background sort of disclaimers. One, things in here may not end up in the budget. There may be other things that do end up in the budget. This is currently the status of some discussions and some considerations that we are considering. Everything in here is not just an add-on. So some of the things that I'm listing may actually be in the base budget per se that we currently have. It may be added on, or it may be added on, but there's been some reductions in other areas. So it just gives you a sense of the types of things that are in the budget per se, but again, not all new items and not all necessarily to remain in the shape it is. So I deliberately haven't got monies attached to these particular priorities. It is in the 5-year outlook, but for the sake of this discussion, it's just to give the board wanted early in the process some ideas of some concepts that they might be seeing, unless if they want to comment on them or otherwise. Probably in a better shape by the next meeting, but the next meeting doesn't give you sort of a lead into the the budget process, so to speak. That's nearly too close. So it's just a wee status update of where we are with this. Some of these should not be new news to the board. And some of them may. There may be other things that are not in here that would be, would make the budget. So the new course offerings, I'm not going to deliberate it. It's the length. You've heard them, you passed them. Appreciate that. Middle school new course offerings, we've had that discussion. Curriculum software, which is essentially a warehousing piece of software to make curriculum alive and accessible, interactive, transparent to anybody who wants to look at it or otherwise. And that would come through the curriculum office. Our K to do reading college units, those are the next units of study for reading. And they're aligned to the science of reading. Each district has to submit to the state what its reading curriculum is, and so we will be aligning it to the Teachers College K to 2 reading units. Open choice under, you see, we've sort of started to frame these around the strategic goals. Open choice, we've discussed. Diversity, equity, inclusion support at some level, in some shape or some form. We're going to need to support this initiative moving forward. The school psychologist at the high school, we flagged this last year when it was on the grant, and we suggested at that point that indicated that this one might actually come through the budget process, and you see it here. Strategic goal 4, expanding the professional capacity of the staff. Professional development includes the following there. You can sort of make your way through those. They're all not additional necessarily. Some of these are just in the base, but it just gives you a couple of ideas of the things that we're talking about. Teacher leadership opportunities talks to you about an opportunity at the high school level to support low-level discipline, and also testing program and potentially a student activities program. So I'm just looking at ways of actually giving our staff experiences in these areas as they grow professionally. It's still a wee bit of, there's a lot of work in progress at the moment. The teacher in residence is in the base. We have to. Can I tell you something, that this is one of the most encouraging, uplifting programs. Our teachers have done a phenomenal job. Our teacher residents who are actually here, the teachers themselves, both the mentors and the teachers, just phenomenal. They have led the way in many ways. That they have. The CRACK program has sort of profiled the Darien program. Luke participates also as a principal and has done a wonderful job with our staff. It's a joy to behold. And at some point we may just have to give you a wee update on this, because it's just a phenomenal program. So the suggestion there is we would stay in that program, and we would continue to bring another 2 teachers through the process. Oops. No, missed it. No. You good? You good? Am I good? Oh, yeah, I'm good. Sorry. Well, that's why I need communication support. So I have this in at the moment. It may not last in it. What is it currently? It currently represents a person. So I'm just saying what's in the actual, 2023 budget. When you see the 23 budget in a moment or two, that doesn't mean to say it's going to last like that. In terms of our website, constant update and communication, we know is an ongoing issue that we want to continue to improve with the community. I put it on there at the moment as a placeholder. I'm continuing to look at what that actually might mean. Improving the facilities, additional facility support. Look, I could put up the board chair would share with me, and I can put up pictures that we see pretty much on a regular basis of where we want the upkeep of the grounds around all of the buildings. Mr. Lynch does a super job, and the staff as best as we can, but we're just understaffed for what we have to do. So that includes groundskeepers, and actually in there is actually 2 groundskeepers. I know that's a large number, and an additional custodian for Ox Ridge. We just saw Ox Ridge. The first phase that we move into is much larger than the building is now, so we're going to need to deal with that. The middle school have an outside classroom. That's something we learned, right? We learned at the high school about the online courses. We've put something in place there. Something else we learned about COVID was kids can learn outside and in different environments. And this is an outside learning environment. Actually, it's sort of inside the actual building itself. So the space that's in the building there, the big courtyard, there's a vision for what to do that. Now, I've said here that potentially that could be for outside funding or support funding. It may or may not. I'll tell you that I support that either way. I think it's a terrific idea. Under improving technology, you may say, are you beating a dead horse here, Dr. Adley, in terms of high school model for one-to-one? No, I'm just saying that COVID has sort of, I won't say it's come and gone because it hasn't gone, but we're moving through the phase. If we're ever going to change something in terms of the model of the one-to-one, will always be one-to-one, meaning each child has a device of some description. The board has had some input into that and some perspective. And we're going to be looking at, well, we are right now as to what that model should look like. If we're going to change it, we should change it now. Well, we should change it now, actually, if we're going to change it at all. So we're actively working at that and looking at that at this particular point. The replacement devices are at the high school. That's just the regular replacement cycle. Servers and a technology technician again. Well, we've seen, we added one technology assistant to the budget. We asked, at one point, there was 2 in it. You didn't see the 2. We brought the 1. We're bringing this additional technology technician back to the table. Those are not all the ideas, but they're certainly the majority of the things that you might see or otherwise in one shape or fashion in the budget.
Thank you, Dr. Adley. I think it's a good process. I think the time that I've been on the board, we've talked about getting more information ahead of time so we could think through the budget process as to what's new or what you're thinking about. I know you started that process with curriculum in general, so I think this helps the conversation. So I'll open up to board questions, thoughts, comments. Mr. Maroney.
Yes, thank you for this. I think exactly as you said, Duke, I think this helps us prepare for the budget process much better than in years past where it's just a surprise. Speaking of surprise, when I first, thank you for the clarification, Dr. Adley, on outside classroom at MMS, because when I read it in my board packet, I thought it was a euphemism for a portable at Middlesex.
Yeah.
So I appreciate the clarification.
You don't want to move them up to the middle? Thank you, Dennis. Any other board questions or thoughts? Well, this will be an ongoing conversation, and this is a fluid document. So thank you, Dr. Adley. We will move over to presentation of 5-year budget projections. I will just say, Dr. Adley and Rich, maybe a little context around this. I've had some conversations with some board members that have reached out to us. This was kind of a process we went through, something that the Board of Finance looked from us. I think sometimes it's difficult to crystal ball, and we are coming up on contract negotiations starting next year in August. My understanding to the board and talking to Dr. Adley and Rich, this is a helpful tool for them to use, whether we want to see it or get into a discussion around it, and it helps. My understanding is the Board of Finance. So with that, I'll let you guys present it, and then we'll open up to questions and thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just say, and then Rich can lead us through it. Whether it's useful for other boards or otherwise, I find it useful to help the administration collectively ourselves start to plan on multiple years out. And you'll begin to see things that were in the out years, and then we continue to water the idea. They either drop off because we don't need to do them for some reason, or they come to fruition. So whether the board at some point wishes to continue with this model, we will to some degree. It might look a wee bit different internally if it wasn't coming to the board, but that each administrator comes to the table with multi-year planning. And so we look at those and sort of like prioritize. So you'll see things here that are on this list that are in the out years, and I'll leave it at that. So I find it helpful. I'll continue it so the board can decide whether they would like to see it moving forward or not. But with that, Rich can lead us through some of the assumptions that we have made here.
So as mentioned before, it is a projection to provide a financial snapshot. It does not represent the proposed budget or potential proposed budgets in the future. So in order to do a 5-year forecast, we do have to make a number of assumptions. Starting with salaries, we did take all our collective bargaining agreements. As mentioned earlier, a number of them will expire within these 5 years. So we did make assumptions of what those contracts would look like, largely based on what they currently look like now. We did maintain current class size guidelines, and then some of the new initiatives that Dr. Adley mentioned are built into here, whether it's the teacher leader position, the communication support, groundskeepers, high school SLP, psychologist, and some other items, whether it's open choice. In the outer years, looking at bringing back forward building conditions survey, primarily looking at the high school, middle school, and Tokenique. some STEM initiatives, talented and gifted that was talked about earlier, and the Mandarin class proposal that had a multi-year outlook. Staff turnover is assumed at 29 teachers, which is what we saw this year, from a master's 19 to a master's 15. We did retain budget control of 4 teachers, which has been relatively close to the standard, and we carried that through. Health insurance, which is a large driver of our budget and has been in the past, is assumed within the current census, and then an annual increase in premiums between 10 and 15%. Where class size guidelines indicate an additional FTE, we did budget an additional insurance package for that. We did not budget any potential municipal contribution for TRB pension. While that's been talked about in the past, it hasn't been talked about recently. The operating expenses do still follow the allocation of resources at the elementary level. We did look at out-of-district tuition, and we aged out students when appropriate, and then assumed certain increases in outplacements based on knowledge that's known. And then contractual increases for things like software have been included in the 5-year projection. Transportation, we did leave the bus that was added a couple of years ago for Fitch Avenue, Renshaw Road for all of the 5 years. Payroll tax expenses assume the cap of 147,000, which is the cap this year. Some of the driving costs that you'll probably see in the upcoming budget is inflation related to utilities. Our rate lock does expire in June 30th, and so we are assuming a large price increase of $2.85 per gallon, and then natural gas increases of about 20%, which is expected due to supply restrictions and inflation. Electricity demand is built into the model, as well as some savings associated with the solar panels that are expected to be installed at Henley, Holmes, and Oxford and Royal. Technology equipment is based on the replacement cycle. And then when appropriate, we did assume a reimbursement rate of 75% for each of the years. We did assume a 2.5% price increase for ELP tuition, and the existing technology shared service agreement remains in place. We did project forward the enrollment. Elementary enrollment, it looks to increase by about 22 students over 5 years. Based on where those students are enrolled, it's a net increase of 7 FTEs in the elementary across those 5 years. If we look back previously, last year we did forecast about 4.5%, and we ended up with a budget of 4.03. So this forecast does assume a number of 4.57. So if we look at it going forward, we're at 4.57, 4.53, and then it trails down to about 3.4, which is a little bit of a product of the teacher contract. As you move forward, everybody who's on the current census, they get closer to that step 19, and then they're only getting GWI and not necessarily step on top of that. Again, the big drivers in this budget are going to be your contractual obligations for the different bargaining units, and then health insurance will play a big role.
Thank you, Mr. Rudel.
So for the first year, we've essentially 1% in health, 2.5% in fixed costs and contractual costs, and then 1% in net offsets of other programs, priorities, so on and so forth.
Look, the board. First look, board thoughts or questions, Mrs. McCammon.
There was a lot of discussion last year about health insurance and the work with the cooperative. Can you just remind us of where you got us last year and what's going on this year?
Sure. So we pulled together with about 13 different communities, not just boards of ed, but municipalities as well. So we had a rate cap last year of 7.95%. We don't have a rate cap this year. Our claims are not good this year. So initial guidance is that health insurance is going to be a large increase. We have put our health insurance plan out to bid to see what it'll look like. We expect that to come back probably in early to mid-December. Part of the issue we have this year is we just have a large number of large claims associated with a small group of people, which is putting upward pressure on those claims. If we look just at the first couple of months of the school year, Anthem, who's our provider, is losing about 25% every month, insuring us based on what they actually have to pay versus what we have as a premium.
Thank you, Mrs. McCann. Dr. Adley.
I'll just to give this the report a wee sense of the scope of some of the challenges before is even in this model, there's built into this model a reduction of probably close to $300,000 that we'd have to make up just to do some of the stuff that we said we might want to do, and with the numbers that we have at the moment. So that's kind of the challenge that we're looking at moving forward.
Any other board questions or comments? Mrs. McCammon.
Just a comment. Thank you. I appreciate the model, but also I appreciate how you delineated all the assumptions. It's very easy to read this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McGowan. All right, we will move along. Thank you. We know we'll have a lot more conversations around all of this, but thank you for the presentations and kind of giving us a preview. Further discussion and possible action on proposed revisions to Board of Education Policy 9350, quorum and voting procedures, and proposed new policy 1310, school security and safety. Ms. Sion.
So the only addition is clarification on what a personal interest is in policy 9350, that Mrs. Ackerman's question. And as it says in the memo, it has to be something direct and substantial. We assume that you're all on the Board of Education to make the schools better. So it has to be something that affects you directly and substantially.
Thank you, Ms. Sion.
For the clarification.
Good. Any further questions or comments? I know we've reviewed these and you've had time to look at them. So we'll move forward. May I have a motion to approve the proposed revisions to Board Policy 9350, quorum and voting procedures, and the proposed new Board Policy 1310, school security and safety as presented? Mrs. Achman, second by Mr. Maroney. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you very much. Marge, we're back at you with the personal action report.
And the resignation of 2 special education paraprofessionals.
Just quickly, Marge, how are we doing on hiring openings?
So the good news is that in December, some kids graduate, and so we've had a slight uptick in applications, but it's still very difficult to find teachers, and we keep trading experienced teachers among school districts. So.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Best. Mrs. Parent.
To see we're losing special education paras and special educators. Are we able to meet our students' needs?
We do that. Shirley and I work together to do it no matter how we have to.
Thank you.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? May I have a motion to approve the personal action report dated November 23rd, 2021. Mr. Maroney, second by Mrs. Best. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Mr. Tranberg, we will move back over to public comment.
If you would like to speak during public comment, click the participation icon on the bottom of your Zoom screen. Next, click the raise hand option. Facilitator will identify you and announce that you are unmuted for public comment. Please state your name and address. You will have up to 3 minutes to comment.
Anyone in the room? We're good. Thank you. We will go to our friends on Zoom.
There are no raised hands.
Thank you, Mr. Tranberg. On behalf of the board, a safe and happy Thanksgiving to all. And we'll see you in December. May I have a thank you. May I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Sini, second by Mrs. Best. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you all.